Tell me a bit about yourself, just as a human.
Well, I grew up in Merritt. I was actually born in Kamloops. My grandparents, Dennis and Louisa Sam, were ranchers on the Lower Nicola Indian Band Reserve. And I spent many, many years just growing up playing on the Lower Nicola Indian Band Reserve with family, cousins, and friends. Went to school at Nicola Canford, did a lot of athletics there. And then I came to Kamloops for high school and athletics was my thing in high school, plus my academics. Started a family after graduation when I was 22, and then um, started a career in economic development and HR and employment, always working with communities in the central interior.
Mhm.
And then I got into a little bit of politics when I started with the BC Native Women's Association.
Mhm.
My goal was to ensure that there were resources available in our province for Indigenous women to take training, to get jobs, and to ensure that our voices were being heard at the national level. And then in 2016, I found myself as the interim chair for the Native Women's Association of Canada. Moved to Ottawa in 2016 after my youngest child graduated from high school. And I've spent the last 6 years in Ottawa and then came back last summer. I'm an only child, so I came back for my mom.
Mhm.
She's 83 now,
Oh, wow.
and trying to get her home on the Lower Nicola Reserve renovated, but it's not easy right now. Older homes on reserves, the cost of renovations. My work is in Kamloops, so there's been a lot, but I mean, I want to be back in Merritt at some point. And so, yeah, I'm working in the Indigenous community in a provincial organization where I work with the province and the feds. And I am looking to share some of my knowledge and do better.
What inspired you to run for member of the Legislative Assembly?
Right. So I've been lucky. I mean, my grandfather, even though he never had a chance to go to school, was always involved in politics. He was a counselor for decades with Lower Nicola Indian Band. And so the dinner table, he would bring a lot of the questions from the community to the dinner table and hear from all of us, including myself as a child, which I always thought was really nice that he actually cared about what I said. So I mean, grew up with a lot of Don, influences, Don Moses, Len Marchand. Um, Never thought I'd get into politics, but I've also had issues affect me. Monica Jack disappeared on my birthday. I mean, I had an older friend, Sherry McLaughlin. She disappeared 2 blocks from my house when my daughter was just over one. So these are issues that need to be not just raised, but followed through to find some sort of solution. So
Mhm.
that's when I realized, that I was in a place where I could bring those concerns to the table and try and help. So that's what I feel like I do both on a provincial level and a national level. But my grandparents, they always said it was important to, come home and help your community out. And I want to come home. I don't want to live in Ottawa. I want to live where my friends and family are.
Why did you choose to run particularly for the NDP?
I felt that my own values match the NDP values. I feel the NDP has been working for the regular British Columbian, and they're willing to hear the concerns that we have. And I think that collaboratively we can work with communities and regular British Columbians to make BC a better place. And I find with Merritt, I've always felt that it's been a real community of friends and family and not, distinguished groups. I remember my grandfather's haystack was on fire one time, and it was like 6 o'clock in the morning. And not only was it the neighbors and the fire trucks coming to help put it out, but it was like everybody in the valley heard about what happened. And there must have been like 30 or 40 people, men, women, older people, younger people, all coming together. And that's the type of community that I want to continue living in.
I understand you've previously worked with Native Women's Association of Canada, National Association of Friendship Centers, and currently, like you mentioned earlier, you're the HR team leader for First Nations Emergency Services. Tell me a bit about those eras in your life.
Yeah, so really the Native Women's Association of Canada and the National Association of Friendship Centers are two long-standing Indigenous organizations that promote trying to help communities in a collaborative vision. We don't step in to take charge. We try and work with the groups themselves to see what are your needs, what are your ideas, and then we advocate at the Capitol, trying to ensure concerns are heard, and not just concerns, money is always needed to run these programs. And then with First Nations emergency services, obviously there's been issues happening in the central interior, especially with the fires and then the mudslides and the atmospheric river and now flooding, where we need to be prepared. And I really feel that, the province has their group already in place, but I think I can work in a better situation with the First Nations emergency services and bring my contacts in place to let them understand this is the work we're doing. We're taking an Indigenous approach to it. We listen to the communities and we work alongside them. And this is a long-term situation because this organization has been around since 1986.
Tell me a bit about some of the experience you acquired in those previous positions that will carry over into your position as MLA.
I think the biggest experience is being able to bring concerns that I was hearing from families and communities about situations like violence against women, jobs, being displaced because of environmental factors, and how it was affect families. We've seen some families who've been displaced out of their communities for years and living out of motels, and that's not a situation anybody wants to live in.
Mhm.
And so I think sometimes you have to remind the people in government, the members of parliament and the bureaucrats that these are people, and they have these ideas and we should listen to their ideas to see what we can support. And if we can't support them, just communicate and let them know why, this isn't happening. But I think communication is the biggest part that I bring because I know a number of people and can get the conversation started and get the support. We had a advocacy group, some of our managers went to Ottawa at the beginning of May for Emergency Preparedness Week. And there's a number of people in Ottawa that don't even know what Finesse is about because we're not really, we're a nonprofit organization. So we are dependent upon not just donations, but core funding, but we're also dependent upon working with First Nations across the province. And other provinces are seeing the work we do and they want to support us and they want us to come help them create their own similar organizations. But we need assistance and we need to be able to show the right people why our work is important.
What will your top priorities be as MLA for Fraser-Nicola?
I guess housing is really up there. My mother's been displaced because of plumbing in her house and asbestos in her house for almost 10 years. So housing is one thing. She's a senior, so having access to resources, has been very difficult for her. Healthcare, she's been lucky to have a doctor. Dr. McLeod's been her doctor for decades. And I still see Dr. Holmes, who used to be my doctor. But it's only been recently that I got a new doctor at the Coquihalla Primary Care. But that was an initiative that took place with my band and other organizations, to bring in doctors, which I thought was a great idea. It benefited me, and I'd like to see those types of sort of outside the box thinking to bring healthcare into Merritt, because Merritt's a great place to live, in my opinion. I'm going back tonight for the night market.
Oh,
And
perfect.
so I enjoy Merritt, but I know that jobs, if I could have found a good job in Merritt, I would have been living in Merritt no matter what.
Mhm.
But I had to look elsewhere, and I was thankful that I found something fairly close. But it's across the province, houses, healthcare, jobs. Um, but I also have younger cousins who have little children. Daycare is important too. And having had two kids, I used to work just to pay the daycare sometimes. But honestly, I think I would have gone crazy if I had just stayed home with my two kids. It was good for us to be apart. But yeah, sometimes you just have to give each other a hand up and just, it's that's the way I grew up in the Nicola Valley, is that everybody was helping everybody. When branding season comes, You go to one ranch, then the next ranch, and everybody's just helping each other out, and it's fun.
How will you be addressing housing then?
Housing, I think we need to really understand, that after the flood in Merritt, especially, we know that houses need to be rebuilt, and we need more housing because so many people are moving from the coast into the central interior. But I do feel like we need to have a priority for housing situations to be built, for our seniors and for our youth, but be considerate that we still have to have commercial properties available to provide services such as massage therapy or counseling. So I think we need to maybe think outside the box of everybody gets a home, a house, and maybe you get a condo or an apartment, uh, depending upon your situation. But I mean, I don't know how to address the interest rate situation. It's nice to see it going down, but we do need to address, there's a lot of investors out there buying up the housing, and even I thought I was doing pretty good financially, but it's hard to find a house myself.
So for the past three elections, Jackie Teggart has won with at least 40% of the vote. How do you think that Teggart has been doing as MLA for Fraser-Nicola?
I have to admire Jackie Taggart. I mean, I admire a lot of women going out there. It's not an easy job. But at some point, I think that you need to be able to pass the baton because it's all about the community. And so I think we need to look at a succession plan. And, I'm at the time in my life where I want to come back to the community, listen to the community. It's a large riding, as we discussed, and bring that to Victoria to ensure that it's not just the bigger municipalities, like Richmond and Vancouver and Kelowna getting the attention. It's our smaller communities that are the backbone of this province.
Mhm.
So we need to be having our concerns addressed in some manner. So I wish Jackie the very best, but I do hope, to be successful. But I do know it's not an easy job, but I'm ready.
Why should the residents of the Fraser-Nicola riding vote for you instead of Taggart or Rustad?
Well, I think for me, I have a vision as to what the Nicola Valley used to be and what I'd like it to become again. I think I'm bringing an Indigenous perspective, but I mean, I'm also a rancher at heart too, so I understand, some of the issues affecting us. I've got the contacts, and I don't mind reaching out to people. I might not know the answers, but I bet I know somebody who knows better than me, and I don't mind reaching out for help. And I think that's what we need to do in this riding is work together, address the economic situations, the healthcare situations, the housing situations, and together we're going to come up with some sort of solution that we can present to Victoria and say, look, this is what we want. They'll help us move forward with this. So maybe it's a little naive, but I feel that we can do something more than just complain about the situation. That's the easy thing. But I think it's hard work being a rancher. So
But what will you do better than them?
I think I'll do better in that I want to be communicating with community. So I think having open houses on a regular basis, at least a quarterly basis, being seen to be in community, um, engaging with the Chamber of Commerce, all the mayor and council, uh, the different academic institutions, all the chiefs and councils, the ranchers, the miners, the people in the forestry sector. It's a lot of communication, even tourism down more in the Harrison Hot Springs Agassiz area. Um, I think it's a matter of engaging those people, listening to what they have to say, bringing it back to Victoria, and then coming back and letting them know that you brought their issues to the table and this was the response. So that communication is really important. And for such a big area as this, it's quite the job.
You were quoted as saying in the press release that announced your candidacy, quote, from housing to healthcare to jobs, the BC NDP has taken action for everyone in Fraser-Nicola. John Rustad would move that backward. We can't afford that risk. Can you elaborate on this quote?
Yeah, well, what I've seen the NDP do is they've been listening to a lot of the voters, a lot of British Columbians as to what the issues are at hand. And they're taking steps. But I mean, British Columbia is a large province, so trying to address every individual's concern hasn't been easy. But I think they're moving forward. Whereas the other two parties, their record in the past has been a lot of cutbacks and layoffs and terminations. And obviously, that's not what we need right now. We need to see a stronger economy. We need to see a good plan as to what's going to happen in the next few years. And we need to make sure that everybody's being heard. And, we might have to think outside the box again and see, okay, maybe we need to look at how can we bring technology into this riding? How can we make sure we're protecting our agriculture, our ranching, and our farms down in the lower part of the riding? But I don't feel that collaborative approach is really a part of the package that the United nor the Conservatives have been doing in the past. So I don't understand why they would change that behavior for the future.
So your expertise are within the Nicola Valley Merritt region. However, as we've discussed, the Fraser-Nicola riding is pretty huge. What will you be doing for residents outside of your areas of expertise?
Basically, I have started to reach out to the First Nations, reaching out to the Chambers of Commerce, the friendship centers. I want to reach out to the tourism groups, community futures. Any of those suggestions, I think it's going to be a lot of door knocking over the next couple of weeks. And it's going to be a lot more of me listening to the concerns of these different groups and individuals and just keeping tabs as to, who's saying what, and then starting tallying up, okay, what are the concerns in what areas and in the riding in general. I just recently bought a hybrid vehicle because I know I'm going to be on the road a lot. I have driven Merritt to Hope, to Lytton, to Lillooet, Logan Lake, and back just to, start getting an idea. And then recently I also came back. I was working in Vancouver for Finesse, and I came back from Maple Ridge. I was at the Justice Institute. So I came back through Agassiz and Desroches, and it's not an area I was very familiar because usually I take the number 1 and go straight down, but I took the number 7. And I mean, just the environment, it's so lush and agricultural. And then you get into the Fraser Canyon and it's not lush. So there's a lot of differences in this riding, but I think, we need to all learn to work together, not just as neighbors, but as British Columbians.
Not directly related to your campaign, however, I am curious, how do you think the Fraser-Nicola region has been doing in regards to reconciliation?
It's been kind of interesting because growing up in the Nicola Valley, especially, my grandfather is a rancher, always needed to have some help, even though he had quite a few kids. So I had all these aunts and uncles. Ranching is not an easy job. So, you got the haying, you got the branding, you got the calving, you got the irrigation. There's always people around the dinner table during those busy moments. So I really find that it's not about being a rancher, being Indigenous, being a forestry worker or a miner. At the end of the day, we are just neighbors sitting across the table, sharing food, sharing drinks, sharing, watching a game. And that's what I really appreciated when I was growing up, that the lack of distinction. Whereas I've gone into other communities and you definitely see, it was quite distinct, the lines of this group and that group. And I hope, again, that we can just think of that as people helping people.
What about in relation to government? How has government been doing in regards to reconciliation in this region?
Well, I have to admit, I was really pleased that the NDP accepted my inquiries. And, as I was reaching out, looking into politics, which party did I feel would best fit with my Indigenous background? And I don't want to be just categorized as a pan-Indigenous woman candidate. I want to be taken as an individual with experience and a network. And I want to be able to share that within the party and within the community. And I found that of the parties of BC, the NDP was the most in alignment with, my values growing up. They're willing to at least listen to me and not tokenize me. I'm not saying that the other parties would have tokenized me, but I think having their first minister being an Indigenous woman previously, they're already making steps to do better. And I really appreciate what Premier Eby and the other MPs are doing. I've had a lot of support from the other MPs when I was just even looking into possibly running, and I feel good about this decision.
In terms of policy decisions, though, whether by the NDP or BC United, previous government bodies within this region, how have they been doing on that end in terms of reconciliation in the region?
I found that this government overall has been very open to hearing about the different perspectives around the province. I was so pleased to be able to share with people in Ottawa that I am a British Columbia resident. When the DRIPA was passed, it makes you feel good just as an individual knowing that your home is making steps even faster than the federal government is, faster than the other provinces. I admire the steps Manitoba's been making with their provincial politics. I know I used to work with Bernadette Smith at the Native Women's Association of Canada.
Mhm.
So it's been exciting to see, that overall British Columbia is moving as fast as any other province, but probably faster in reconciliation and making steps to develop relationships with indigenous groups.
That's about it from my end. Is there anything that you would like to add?
I'm hoping within the next 2 weeks to be able to take a leave from Vanessa and start really getting out to community. You will have our first fundraiser over in Agassiz on August 10th and start meeting with the citizens in that area. And I'm really looking forward to the Labor Day rodeo in Merritt. I always love going to that.
My last question for you, I like to end all of my interviews with this question. What's a fun fact about yourself? Any fun fact?
Well, it's a fun fact about me. Let's see, what is a fun fact about me? I guess a fun fact about me that a lot of people, especially back in Ottawa, were surprised to hear. But I was alongside my uncle a lot of times delivering cows, and I've actually had to turn a calf breech, and not a fun thing to do, but I'm definitely into it up to my armpits sometimes. And I'm a cowgirl at heart, but a lot of people in Ottawa don't really realize that. Because in Ottawa, you're usually looking so prim and proper, but I like to get down into it. And riding horses is the best thing. I can't wait to do that again, hopefully at the rodeo.